Right, so there's been a strong media narrative over the past few months about Newcastle being rejected by anyone and everyone. So I want to actually have a look at who has really rejected Newcastle. So if you're a Newcastle fan or a football fan and you go on social media, there is going to be pretty much constant posts about how Newcastle have been rejected by pretty much everyone. And this is something that I kind of saw coming a few months ago, where I actually kind of made a video on this, where I was sort of talking about the players that we've apparently been rejected by back then, and was like, well, how have we been rejected by this player? Because we were never in for this player. But, you know, let's not let the truth get in the way of a good story or anything. But yeah, I actually made a video back then talking about who we'd actually been rejected by and who we hadn't. And it was like, you know, maybe like 4 or 5 players back then. Since then, you know, we're now apparently being rejected by 9 or 10. So, you know, even back then at the start, I was kind of already raising questions as to, you know, the media trying to push this narrative. And I'm not saying we haven't been rejected by any players. We have. That's kind of the whole point of this video, to look at the ones that we genuinely have been rejected by. And again, generally, as the point of this channel is to just cut through the bullshit and actually figure out what's gone on. And speaking of cutting through the bullshit, when we get on to, obviously, Sesko, who, by the way, we were rejected by, before any Man United fans lose their head. So that's one done already, but I'll get to that one. I'll go back over that one later on, because I've got some interesting information on the Sesko one, which once again proves why Fabrizio Romano is absolutely full of shite. And not only Fabrizio Romano, David Ornstein, and I think there was maybe a couple others that reported this story as well. So I'll get into that story later on when I talk about Sesko. But yeah, in this video, I'm going to go through all of the players that we've been rejected by, and we're just going to actually have a look at what's really gone on. Now, before we get into that, a couple little things. First of all, thank you to everyone for absolutely smashing me past the 5k subs mark. 5k in the first 5 months, fucking unreal. I honestly, I can't believe, like, I'm just over the moon, genuinely, with like how grateful I am for everyone supporting the channel. 5k subs in the first 5 months of this channel. I thought it would honestly take me like over a year, probably, you know, potentially 2-3 years to get to 5k subs. So I'm just absolutely buzzing. So again, a genuine massive thank you to everyone for that. But also the channel growth, as much as I am massively grateful for that, anyone who hasn't subscribed, anyone who's new to the channel, please also do subscribe. If you want to see more content like this, the more the channel grows, the more time I'm going to be able to put into this channel. And then the second thing I want to quickly mention, anyone who's been watching the channel for a while, you might have noticed a small change to the background. First of all, obviously, I put Rafa Benitez back up because he'd fallen down behind the shelf. But secondly, I've got this cool light thing here. One of the regular viewers, one of the subscribers to the channel, just randomly messaged me on Facebook, like on the Noises Facebook page, and they just wanted to send me this little gift. Just, you know, they said I could put it in the background of the videos if I want to. I don't have to, and I haven't been paid to say this or anything. It's just this cool little light up star thing over here. But just because, like, obviously this is kind of like the first thing really that someone sort of sent to me, and I'm kind of just a bit like, sort of, I don't know, blown away and like flattered by the fact that someone just kind of wants to send me a thing for free. So I also just want to say a big thank you to Brian for that. And if anyone does want to buy one of these, I'll put a link to his eBay listing in the description. I didn't actually tell him I was going to sort of like promote it on the channel, I guess, but I'm just really kind of grateful. So I just kind of, you know, want to help him out a bit, I guess. But anyway, with all that said, let's get into who have Newcastle actually been rejected by. So, as I said, on social media, there's been absolutely fucking loads of posts about who Newcastle have been rejected by. So this is just one of the posts I found about almost a team full of players that Newcastle have been rejected by. And there is some that have posted even more and actually filled the full 11, but they have like Tiao or Theo or whatever you want to call him in it, and I'm pretty sure we've just signed him. So I'm just going to go with this one because obviously that one literally makes no sense at all. So starting in order of the picture, we'll start with Ekatike. So yes, we were rejected by him. He did choose Liverpool over us. So that's one. We were rejected by one so far. They have apparently put him on 250k a fucking week though. So what do you fucking expect? Second, moving on to Liam Delap. So were we rejected by Liam Delap? Now, there was no bid ever. There was reported interest. But when we talk about reported interest, as I've said before, reported interest kind of means fuck all, really. Reported interest can literally just be as far as that player was on a list. We may have quickly called up to see, you know, what the finances of a deal might look like, and that can be as far as that reported interest went. Now, I'm not saying that if we were in for Liam Delap, he wouldn't have rejected us. He probably would have done because he was in Ipswich. He got offered a contract by Chelsea. I think apparently he's a boyhood Chelsea fan. So chances are he wanted to stay in London and did probably want to sign for Chelsea. So on that one, I'm not going to put it down because there's no real actual confirmation that we were rejected by Liam Delap. Lindelof. If there were confirmation that came out on that, sure, he can add to the list too. But for now, we're still sticking with just one. Moving on to Sesko. So this one, yes, we were rejected by Sesko. He did choose to go to Man United. Now, why did Sesko choose to go to Man United? If you listen to the media and you listen to Man United fans about this, it's because of just the sheer pull that Man United have. Nobody can turn down Man United. Man United are just the greatest club ever, and nobody can turn down that pull. Or we could live in the real world where Man United finished 15th last season, have no European football, but what they do have is a lot of money. And this brings me on to the point of Fabrizio Romano talking absolute bollocks once again. So not only Fabrizio Romano, David Ornstein as well, both claim that Newcastle offered a higher wage package to Sesko than Man United did. So let's have a look at the actual plausibility of that claim. So what we're going to do is look into a few numbers that we actually know. So since that claim came out, we have found out what Sesko's wages at Man United actually are. And they are £160,000 per week. So let's just bear that number in mind, 160k per week, and then look at Newcastle United's wage structure. So Newcastle's wage structure, our highest paid player, our captain, Bruno, the man that bleeds fucking black and white, is on 160k a week. And he has earned that 160k a week by giving to this club, giving everything to this club. The man consistently, every single season since he's been here, posts the record for the most distance covered in the Premier League. Absolutely wears his heart on his sleeve, has barely missed a game. Like, that man, if anyone at any club deserves to be the highest paid player at any club, it's Bruno. He literally fucking bleeds black and white, and he's from Brazil. And as I said, he is on 160k a week, on the exact same as what Man United are giving Sesko. So for us to have offered a higher package to Sesko, what we'd have had to have essentially done there is said to Bruno, I know that you have literally, like, blood, sweat and tears for this club, given absolutely everything. Like, I know that you're probably eventually going to be at the point where you have a statue outside this club, and, you know, thanks for all that. But what we're going to do is we're going to go and give a 22-year-old unproven striker that needs work, needs coaching, we're going to go and give him more than you. Like, in what world is that a fucking plausible thing to do? Like, that, we are never going to do that. The only person that we would have potentially gone above Bruno's wages for would have been Isak, and that is because he is one of the best strikers in the world. Sesko is miles away from Isak currently. I'm not saying he couldn't eventually be there, but currently he is worlds apart from Isak. So once you look at the actual numbers that we know of, the absolute best case scenario, and even that is very unlikely, the absolute best case scenario is that we offered to match Man United's wages offer to Sesko. But again, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, right? But anyway, back to whether or not Sesko did reject us. Yes, he did. So that's two players that have rejected us. Then we'll move on to Matheus Cunha. Absolutely, did he fuck reject us because we were never in for him? He is the laziest player in the Premier League, has the literal highest amount of time walking spent in the Premier League last season. And if you go to Newcastle United's training ground, all over the walls is plastered, "Intensity is our identity." So what about Matheus Cunha fits the mold of "intensity is our identity"? So that is just pure bollocks. But once again, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. Next on the list, somehow Mohamed Kudus. Where the fuck that came from, no idea. We were never in for Mohamed Kudus. We wanted a right winger. The right winger that we bid on last January was Elanga. Elanga is the right winger that we have signed. I'm not saying we didn't potentially, you know, have maybe Kudus on a list at some point, or have a, you know, snoop around some other right wingers, but Kudus was not our target. Elanga was our target. Hence the fact that we bid on him before already. All of these players were at the same clubs back in January. We bid for none of them. We bid for Anthony Elanga, which naturally brings us on to Mbeumo. So I'm going to kind of mess with the natural order of the picture that I put up at the start. Just go straight to Mbeumo because that one links straight into Mbeumo. Again, another player that, you know, is very good, has great numbers in the Premier League, but we've never actually shown a concrete interest in Mbeumo. We have bid on Elanga before, so everything that we know that isn't just bollocks media reports would say that Elanga was our first target. So again, weren't really in for Mbeumo. Now, I'm not saying that things might not have slightly changed. Mbeumo had a really good season, and maybe we could have been in for Mbeumo. You know, maybe there was a level of truth to the reports. But again, them reports can be as much as call up, see what the financials are of making a deal like that happen. And when we call up and find out that Brentford aren't going to accept anything less than, I think, 70 million was it he eventually went for? Not to mention, even though Man United were apparently the team he wanted all along, he was still unwilling to go any lower than 150k a week. week. Again, as I mentioned on our wage structure earlier on, players don't come into Newcastle on 150k a week. Mr. fucking bleeds black and white, blood, sweat and tears for the club is on 160k a week, and he has earned that at Newcastle United. We're not going to give players who have given fuck all to this club 160k a week over the top of Bruno. It's not going to fucking happen. So that means we're still out of 5 players at this point on 2 players that have actually rejected us. Now moving on to João Pedro, that's another one that has actually rejected us, so now we're on to 3. But also, once again, probably a little bit similar to the Delap situation in that he was already in London, probably just wanted to stay in London, and by all reports that I've heard, he's only on 120k a week at Chelsea, so that is a wage that we probably could have matched. So that one is a case of he did just reject us, want to go to Chelsea, and as I said, probably just wanted to stay in London. So that is 3 players that we've actually been rejected by. Then moving on to Dean Howson, again, just media reports, no concrete bid, nothing of real evidence, but also he went to fucking Madrid. Even if we were rejected by him to go to Madrid, so would every other club have been in the Premier League. Liverpool just found that out quite fucking harshly. So for the sake of being completely unbiased, if you really want to, because of the dubiousness of the Delap one and also the dubiousness of this one, like, let's say that it's 4 now. Those 2 can both be like a 0.5 and make another one, so 4. So we've been rejected by 4 players, although we haven't actually been, but just for the sake of non-biasness, 4. Then Mark Gahey, we've not even gone back in for him this window, so why the fuck is he on the list? Still 4. And then last but not least, James Trafford. Now, this is a bit of an interesting one because we were genuinely interested in him and he has gone to Manchester City. So on the face of it, you would think we've been rejected, but when you actually look into what genuinely happened there, we spent ages fucking around negotiating with Burnley over like 2 or 3 million or whatever. Eventually, they finally accepted our deal after about 2 years of negotiating. The whole time, James Trafford had been itching to come to us. He'd been basically flat out saying it in interviews, and also at one point ended up having to train alone because he wanted to move that much. But unfortunately, as soon as we actually had a bid finally accepted from Burnley, Manchester City came in, the club that had sold James Trafford to Burnley in the first place, and they used a clause that was in the contract of that sale, or James Trafford's contract, I'm not sure which it was, but it was reported by Keith Downey from Sky Sports that there was a clause in the contract that meant if Manchester City matched an accepted bid from another club, James Trafford had to go there. Now, I'm not saying that James Trafford wouldn't have made that choice himself. Maybe he would have done, we don't really know. There's, you know, multiple ways of looking at it. Like, obviously, Manchester City are a more successful club than us, more chances of winning trophies currently. But then the flip side for Newcastle, obviously, we'd wanted him for longer, we'd shown an interest in him for longer, and also for his like career progression, there's more of a clear avenue into the first team, probably within like the next year maybe, than there maybe is at Manchester City. So there's, you know, different ways to look at it, and then obviously you've probably got the actual wages on offer at Manchester City as well, which obviously heavily tips it in Manchester City's favour. If he were to be actually making a choice, but you can't reject someone if you're not actually making a choice and you are contractually obliged to go to that club. And again, that's not me saying he really wanted Newcastle over City. So anyone that's in the comments saying, oh, well, if he really wanted Newcastle that much, he could have kicked up a fuss the way that Isak has, and, you know, maybe he wouldn't have had to go to City. I'm sure he was perfectly happy to go to City. But let's not pretend he actually had a choice here. He didn't reject us, he just contractually didn't have a choice. So of all them 10 players that we've apparently been rejected by, there was only actually 3, but then I gave 4 just for the dubiousness of 2 of them. So there we have it. The facts are we've been rejected by actually definitely 3 players, maybe 4 at best 5. But again, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. So from there, I think you really kind of have to ask, why is this narrative being pushed so hard? Because this isn't the first time that we've been apparently rejected by players. Like, most Newcastle fans are actually somewhat used to this. We were apparently in for Maddison. That's another one that I'm not necessarily sure I believe fully, but we were apparently in for Maddison and we were rejected by him for him to go to Spurs. We were definitely in for Tosin. He went to Chelsea. We were definitely in for Ekatike once before and he went to PSG. You know, we were apparently in for Elise. He went to Bayern. We were apparently in for Rafinha. He went to Barcelona. Like, if you go back over the past few years since the takeover, the same thing has been happening the whole time. The same apparent reports of players that we were in for but weren't really in for, and then they've gone to massive clubs. Like, this has been a recurring theme over the past 3 or 4 years. Literally nothing has changed. So a lot of the Newcastle fans that kind of have followed the club very intensely over the past few years, most of them are quite used to this, because most of us are happy to accept that we're not at the elite level yet. We know that we don't have the pull of a Bayern Munich, of a Liverpool, of a Madrid. But suddenly, even though this exact same thing has actually been happening for a few years now, suddenly there's this mass media push on it. I wonder why that is. Do you know what? I'm not even going to hypothesize. I'll just be told I'm a conspiracy theorist if I tell you what I think the reason of that is. So I'm going to let everyone in the comments, you let me know why you think that despite nothing actually changing, Newcastle missing out on targets at pretty much the exact same rate as we have been over the last 3 or 4 years. Why is there such a media push on it now? Why is it literally dominating the headlines? Why is everyone talking now about Newcastle missing out on players when nothing has changed? This has been the same for the last 3 or 4 years. Nothing has actually changed. So why is there such a push now? You let me know in the comments. And obviously I just mentioned the size of the club in, you know, it was in comparison to like Bayern, Madrid, Liverpool, like whatever. I just mentioned the size of the club as to one of the reasons, you know, why we don't have the pull that these clubs do. Outside of just the size of the club, I want to look at other reasons people give as to why players apparently reject Newcastle. So we've got some of the more logical ones, like, you know, we can't pay the same wages. Yep, I would completely agree with that. I think that will be 100% a deciding factor as to whether someone comes to us or not. Probably the most important deciding factor, if anything. You know, then you've got opportunity to win trophies. Again, dependent on the club, completely fair. You can even make an argument for Man United being above us on that, because even during their fucking horrible spell, they've still won a fair few trophies. So you can even make a case for Man United there on that one. But then if we look at some of the slightly more stupid reasons that some people genuinely give us, like what they think is the defining factor as to whether someone will come to Newcastle or not, I think the top of the list is that people don't want to come to Newcastle as a city. Now, that's not me saying that people don't prefer London over Newcastle. I'm sure a lot of people, most players probably do prefer London over Newcastle, and especially the players' wives, as a lot of people always mention. You know, in terms of lifestyle, London does have a lot more, you know, shopping, restaurants, all that kind of stuff. So players' wives are naturally going to say, if it is an even playing field, can you go to London instead? But that is if it was a completely even playing field. That is the last deciding factor. This is not a make or break situation. This is not a scenario where, as many people seem to make it out to be, we just flat out can't attract players to the northeast of England, no matter what we have to offer. Like, it's just pure fucking bollocks. It doesn't matter what you think of Newcastle as a city, whether you think it's a great place, whether you think it's a shithole. I couldn't care less what you think of Newcastle as a city. I think it's fucking mint. If you're someone that's trying to put out there that players aren't going to come to Newcastle because of the city, I couldn't give a fuck what you think about Newcastle as a city, because quite frankly, I think you're a fucking idiot. Because ultimately, the actual deciding factors on this, the deciding factors are wages and opportunity to win trophies. Do not for a second even try and kid yourself that if we weren't hamstrung by PSR and out here offering Saudi level wages, don't for a second even try and convince yourself that players are going to choose to go to London over coming and getting paid stupid money in Newcastle. I'm not saying we should be able to break the game completely like that and just be able to throw whatever wages at anyone. All I'm saying is that money is the deciding factor. It's got very little to do with people not wanting to be in the northeast. That's just some bullshit made up by Southerners. Oh, and actually, I also nearly forgot the other deciding factor as to whether people want to go to a club is actual career progression in terms of like player development, like how well players are being developed at that club. Like if they're a young player, their opportunity to actually get into the first team. If they're not a young player, just, as I say, just general player development. And at Newcastle, that's pretty fucking strong. That's a massive positive. So if we go back to players like Sesko, who's obviously just gone to Man United, you know, the unfinished kind of needs work, needs development. Personally, I think he's a fucking idiot who's just gone for more money. And obviously, you've got the potential argument of like more trophies, possibly, although I think that's a very, very hard case to make. But as I said, even during Man United's poor years, they've still managed to get more trophies than us. And even though they were absolutely fucking awful all of last year, did still manage to make a cup final. Absolutely embarrassed themselves in that cup final. Well, they did make it to a cup final. But yeah, in terms of player development, Eddie Howe, Jason Tindall, every single player that we have signed, or not even just signed, every single player that's basically gone through Newcastle since those two came into the club have absolutely transformed as players. That's why we have Isak being who he is right now, not the dickhead that he's been at the moment, as in the level of player that he is at the moment. Every single player that's come in has just gone levels above what they were when they, you know, first came in. Players that were there when Eddie Howe and Jason Tindall first came in, levels above the player that they were when those two came in. You know, you're looking at Joe Linton, Jacob Murphy, you know, even your players like Sean Longstaff and stuff like that who have obviously gone on. They looked better players, you know, massively improved players in the time that they'd been at the club. Even like Dan Burn, for example, not saying he was ever a bad player, but he has gone up up levels since he came to the club. And then there's the obvious ones. You've got, you know, Bruno, Tonali, Gordon, all of these players, great players as they signed for the club, now incredible players whose values have near enough doubled in the time that they've been at the club. And that's not to mention all the stuff that we've heard players say about Eddie Howe, how he basically treats the players like he's their father. Do you know what I mean? Like, he looks after them on a personal level, gets to know their family, their friends, just gets to know the players on a personal level and looks after the players as if they're his fucking kids. Like, if you're a 22-year-old unfinished sort of like raw talent and you need nurturing, you need coaching, like the player development aspect of whether you want to join a club or not, there are few clubs better than Newcastle for that, and Man United is certainly not fucking one of them. That's a player graveyard. And just quickly, another little point there on what I said about Eddie Howe. The way that Eddie Howe looks after his players, gives that level of care, gets to know their families, all that kind of stuff. When you take that into account, I think that really says a lot about this Isak situation and potentially Isak's character. For him to be able to take that from Eddie Howe, to take that level of like love and care from Eddie Howe, and to just absolutely throw him to the wolves as he essentially has at the moment, off the back of a year where Eddie Howe has just been hospitalized with pneumonia, to put this level of stress on him at this point, like, I don't know, man, there's a lot of fans that are wanting to be able to forgive Isak, you know, because he might end up staying. As I said, if he does end up staying, you know, I'm going to celebrate the goals because at the end of the day, I want Newcastle to do well. But the way that he's acted, like, I don't think I can begin to like Isak again. The way that it's going to be for me is, and someone actually said this in one of my comments, and I thought it was written really well, is that Isak's actions have actually shown us exactly what his relationship is with the club and fans. You know, we basically idolized him. We did the tifos, we did everything to show that adoration for him. And what he's essentially said is there was no fucking point in doing that because for him it's just business, it is just a job. And I understand that. I understand for a lot of players it is just a job, but Isak's made it very clear that that's exactly what it is. So for me, as I said, if Isak does stay, no matter how well he does next season, there's no adoration, there's no tifos. Isak has basically made it clear himself, it is just business. Unless there is some major apology where he comes out and said he was very, very badly advised, sacks his agent, all that kind of stuff. Unless all that happens, like for me, as I said, it's just business going forwards. That level of like adoration and idolization, things like the tifos and stuff like that, you know, that will be reserved for players like Bruno. Potentially even players like Gordon, someone that kind of got a lot of stick last year, but someone who was in a similar position, if anything in a worse position, because it was actually us trying to facilitate the sale to Liverpool, not the other way around. And also we can't forget Liverpool is his boyhood club. But despite that, he still acted with much more class and respect for the club than Isak did. So yeah, Gordon's gone up massively in my estimation. But anyway, this video's getting kind of long now and I'm sort of rambling a bit. So thanks for watching and I'll see you on the next one.